What's frustrating you the most right now?
Probably just losing.
Russ is one of the most talented basketball players that has ever played the game of basketball. He's been great for us all year long, and he's going to continue to be great for us.
Russell Westbrook's next chapter is really fascinating, and what I'm about to tell you about Russell Westbrook's next move will shock you. We're talking about a potential contract offer that's so massive that it would make him the highest paid American in European basketball history. More money than some NBA starters make, and as a matter of fact, it's kind of in line for how much a Supermax contract was paid to him once his contract with the OKC Thunder in 2017 ran out. But before we get to that bombshell, you need to understand how a former MVP went from OKC Thunder legend to potentially playing his final season 6,000 miles away from the league that made him famous. Russell Westbrook stands at the biggest crossroads of his career right now, and the decision he makes in the next few weeks will either salvage his legacy or completely rewrite it. The former MVP, who once averaged a triple-double for 3 straight seasons, is facing a choice between chasing one more NBA run or taking what could be the biggest European basketball contract in basketball history. At 36 years old, with his Denver Nuggets future uncertain after organizational upheaval, Russell Westbrook has to decide whether to keep grinding in America or become a basketball king overseas. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why this isn't just about money. It's about pride, family, and a reputation that's been dragged through the mud for 3 straight years, most famously during his time with the Lakers.
I'm a biggest fan. Westbrook. Westbrook. Russell Westbrook.
Return home this Sunday afternoon, 12:30 tip-off against the Portland Trailblazers.
The stakes couldn't be higher for a player who went from OKC Thunder legend to Los Angeles Lakers scapegoat to Clippers role player to Denver Nuggets question mark in just a few years. This isn't just about where Russell Westbrook plays next season. It's about how one of the most explosive and beloved point guards in NBA history wants to finish his story. Will he accept a reduced role to chase rings in the league that made him famous once again, or will he take his talents to Tel Aviv and potentially make more money than he did in the NBA? But here's what nobody's talking about yet, and I'll reveal the shocking details later in this video. There's already been secret preliminary discussions between Westbrook's camp and European teams that could change everything. The answer reveals everything about what matters most to Russell Westbrook: legacy, money, pride, and family. And right now, all 4 of those factors are pulling him in different directions as teams across 2 continents try to figure out what he's worth. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. We've also been posting more content on my Twitter. All of my socials are in the description, and now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. We created a new Discord server where we've been profiting like crazy on Prize Picks, including this crazy $2,000 hit just the other day. I'm going to leave a link to join this Discord community in the description down below. It's a WAP link. And if you haven't signed up for Prize Picks, make sure you use my promo code microphone to get a free $50 when you make a play of $5 or more. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? You guys remember when Russell Westbrook was untouchable? Back in Oklahoma City, he was the heart and soul of a franchise, averaging insane numbers that nobody thought was possible. Triple doubles became so routine that we stopped being amazed by them. He was loyal, he was fierce, and he was everything you wanted in a franchise player. Russell Westbrook was exactly what Oklahoma City needed after they were heartbroken by one of the most cowardly moves in NBA history: Kevin Durant leaving the team that lost 3-1 to them in the Western Conference Finals to join the team that beat them and also blew a 3-1 series lead to the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. Russell Westbrook was a beacon of hope, and the OKC Thunder did their absolute best to build around him, trading for Paul George while also bringing alongside Carmelo Anthony to make one of the most unique big threes we've ever seen. But then Paul George left and everything changed. The Thunder traded Russell Westbrook to the destination of his choice. He wanted to go to the Houston Rockets and form a dynamic duo with James Harden, and in 2019 he got what he wanted. But at the same time, Russell Westbrook Westbrook could have never known what his next chapter would hold, because little did Russell Westbrook know that from this day forward, he was going to become a journeyman in the NBA. But it didn't really bother him at the time, because he was still getting paid supermax money. And this journeyman career wasn't by choice, but it was strictly by circumstance. The Rockets experiment lasted exactly one season before they flipped him to Washington. The Wizards kept him for 1 year before the Los Angeles Lakers took their shot. Then the Lakers couldn't wait to get rid of him after 2 disastrous seasons. This isn't the normal career path for a guy who won MVP and made 9 All-Star teams, a future first ballot Hall of Famer. Usually, players like that stick with 1 or 2 franchises and retire as legends. Instead, Russell Westbrook has played for 5 different teams in the last 6 years, and none of them worked out the way anyone hoped. The Lakers situation was especially brutal. Magic Johnson called it potentially the worst trade in Lakers history. Skip Bayless turned Westbrook into a daily social media campaign. Fans sent death threats to his family. The man who once had an entire city chanting his name became the most criticized player in basketball, and not always for fair reasons. When your own teammates are allegedly calling you a vampire in the locker room behind your back, like what happened after the Lakers traded him to Utah, you know that something has gone seriously wrong. This wasn't just about basketball anymore. That was personal, and it showed how far his reputation had fallen. But here's the plot twist that most people missed, and this is crucial for understanding why Europe might be calling his name. After hitting rock bottom with the Los Angeles Lakers, Russell Westbrook actually had a quietly successful season that proved that he could still contribute at a high level. And most fans have no idea this happened, and it completely changed the conversation about his future value. The main reason Russell Westbrook didn't work out with the Lakers was because he was getting paid supermax money to form a big three with LeBron James and Anthony Davis on a Lakers team with absolutely no depth. Russell Westbrook shrunk the Lakers' court. To build a successful team around LeBron James, you need to ensure that he's spaced out with 3-and-D players, and Russell Westbrook wasn't that. But here's what's crazy: Westbrook actually had a really good year in 2023-24, but almost nobody noticed because it happened with the Clippers instead of the more popular Los Angeles team. When the Clippers started 3-7 after trading for James Harden, Russell Westbrook made a decision that probably saved both his career and their season. He went to coach Tyronn Lue and volunteered to come off the bench. Not because he was forced to, not because he was benched, but because he saw what the team needed and put winning first. The results were immediate. The Los Angeles Clippers went 48-21 after Westbrook moved to the bench, and he became the vocal leader of their second unit. He averaged 11 points, 5 rebounds, and 4.5 assists in just 22.5 minutes per game. These are career lows across the board, but it worked. Paul George said, "It takes a lot what he's sacrificing for us going forward," and James Harden praised his unselfishness. For once, the narrative around Russell Westbrook was positive. He was being praised for leadership instead of criticized for selfishness. He even recorded his first triple-double as a Clipper in April, showing flashes of the old magic when the moment was right. But then the playoffs happened. Against the Dallas Mavericks, Russell Westbrook was abysmal. He shot just 26% from the field and had more turnovers than assists. He got ejected in Game 3 for fouling Luka Doncic and shoving PJ Washington. The Clippers lost the series 4-2, and suddenly all that regular season goodwill evaporated. The Clippers decided they'd finally seen enough and traded Russell Westbrook to Utah in July of 2024, where he was immediately bought out. Within days, the Denver Nuggets swooped in and signed him to a 2-year, $6.8 million deal. Basically the veteran minimum for a guy who once made $47 million per year. Denver seemed like an ideal fit. Nikola Jokic makes everybody better. They needed veteran depth, and Russell Westbrook could fill a specific role without being asked to carry the offense. The question was whether or not he would help the Denver Nuggets spacing, as they had just lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in free agency, and there's no question about it that Russell Westbrook is a vastly different player than KCP. Even in the beginning of the season, Michael Malone voiced his displeasure from the lack of shooting from the Denver Nuggets.
The guys that are full of won't hear it. You know, they'll say coach is tripping.
For most of the 2024-25 season, it actually worked pretty well. Russell Westbrook averaged 13.3 points, 6.1 assists, and 4.9 rebounds while shooting a respectable 44.9% from the field. But basketball is about way more than just regular season numbers, and Denver's season fell apart when it mattered most. They fired both head coach Michael Malone and their general manager Calvin Booth right before the season ended, with interim coach Nikola Jokic, David Adelman, benching Russell Westbrook in crucial moments down the stretch. The breaking point came during a loss to Minnesota, where Russell Westbrook fouled Nickeil Alexander-Walker on a potential game-winning three-pointer, costing Denver the game despite Nikola Jokic having a 61-point triple-double. Anonymous Nuggets players reportedly called him immature after another playoff loss, and Aaron Gordon reportedly challenged Russell Westbrook about his attitude in a heated locker room discussion. Now Russell Westbrook holds a $3.47 million player option for next season, but multiple reports say his future in Denver is uncertain. When a 36-year-old veteran on a minimum deal has an uncertain future with a team that's trying to contend, that tells you everything about where his NBA value stands right now. Now here's where it could get a little depressing for Russell Westbrook fans, because we need to talk about where Russell Westbrook can actually play next season if he wants to stay in the NBA. The truth is, his options are more limited than you might think, and the money isn't that great. In fact, what I'm about to show you makes the European offer look even more attractive. The Brooklyn Nets have emerged as the betting favorites to sign him, and it makes perfect sense. They have around $58 to $60 million in cap space, the most in the NBA, and they're in rebuild mode, which means they can offer him a real role without the pressure of immediate championship expectations. For a team that's going to be bad anyway, adding Russell Westbrook gives them veteran leadership for their young players and could potentially sell some tickets. But what would be the point of that if you're getting paid more money to go overseas and you're not going to win a championship anyway? Sacramento is the other realistic option that makes basketball sense. They need veteran point guard depth after trading De'Aaron Fox. They have the mid-level exception available, and their style of play could actually suit Russell Westbrook's strengths. Playing alongside Domantas Sabonis and DeMar DeRozan in a fast-paced offense might be exactly what he needs to prove he can still contribute. Detroit, Orlando, and New Orleans all have various levels of cap space or exceptions, but they also have questions about whether they really want to invest in a 36-year-old point guard who's coming off of a disappointing playoff run. Phoenix and other contenders could use the veteran leadership, but they're limited to taxpayer mid-level exception money, around $5.2 million, and have younger, more reliable options available. The contract projections are sobering. We're talking about $5 to $12 million annually, with the realistic range being closer to $5 to $8 million. Compare that to guys like Spencer Dinwiddie, Gary Trent Jr., and Tyus Jones, who all signed for the veteran minimum last summer despite putting up solid numbers, and the market for aging veterans is brutal right now, even productive ones. Here's the one thing that nobody wants to say out loud. Russell Westbrook might be better than a $5 million player, but he's not better than the problems that come with paying him more than that. Teams know his skills, but they also know his history, his ego, and his tendency to create drama even when he doesn't mean to. And this is where things get absolutely wild. While NBA teams are offering Russell Westbrook the veteran minimum, there's a team in Israel that's reportedly preparing to offer him more money than any American player has ever made in European basketball. And when I tell you these numbers, you're going to understand why Russell Westbrook might actually be crazy to not take this deal. Hapoel Tel Aviv is reportedly putting together what European basketball reporter Nemanja Zoric called a salary never seen before in European basketball, and it could completely change the conversation about Westbrook's future. But before I reveal the exact dollar amounts that are being discussed, and trust me, you'll want to hear this, let me explain why this offer is even more valuable than it appears on the surface. European contracts are typically reported as net salary, meaning after taxes, while NBA salaries are gross and get cut in half by taxes depending on where you play. So when I tell you that Hapoel Tel Aviv is potentially offering Russell Westbrook $3 to $4 million net, that's equivalent to $6 to $8 million gross in the NBA. Plus they usually cover housing, cars, and other expenses that could add another $50,000 to $100,000 in value. So let me put this in perspective for you. Patrick Beverley signed a $2 million annual deal with Hapoel Tel Aviv in 2024, though he left mid-season after a dispute with his head coach. Typical Pat Bev, am I right? If they're talking about an unprecedented offer for Russell Westbrook, we're probably looking at something significantly higher, maybe $3 to $4 million annually after taxes, which would make him one of the highest paid players in European basketball history. But wait, it gets even better for Russell Westbrook. The Israeli league might not have the prestige of the NBA, but it's not some sort of amateur setup either. Maccabi Tel Aviv operates on a $27 million budget and has won 6 EuroLeague titles. Hapoel Tel Aviv just won the Euro Cup championship and will join the EuroLeague next season, which is widely considered the second best basketball league in the world after the NBA. Players who've made the jump describe European basketball as more tactical and team-oriented than the NBA, with different rules that allow more physical play and zone defenses. The season is shorter, about 9 to 10 months, compared to the NBA's year-round grind, mind, and the travel's manageable within Europe rather than cross-country flights every few days. Other European options exist too. Real Madrid and FC Barcelona in Spain have massive budgets. Turkish teams like Fenerbahce and Anadolu Efes can pay elite players $2 to $3 million annually, and Italian teams have been competitive in signing NBA talent. The EuroLeague overall has players earning $400,000 to $800,000 typically, with elite players making around $2 to $5.4 million a year. The question for Russell Westbrook isn't whether the money is there, it clearly is. The question is whether he can handle the cultural adjustment, the different style of play, and being thousands of miles away from his family for most of the year. But here's where the story gets really interesting and why Russell Westbrook's decision could go either way. Russell Westbrook isn't the first explosive point guard to face this dilemma, and looking at how similar players handled their decline gives us clues about what might work for him. But one comparison in particular will blow your mind, and it perfectly explains why Europe might be his best option. Carmelo Anthony is probably the best success story. After struggling with the New York Knicks, Oklahoma City Thunder, and Houston Rockets, he completely reinvented himself with the Los Angeles Lakers in the 2021-22 season. He accepted a bench role, improved his three-point shooting to 37.5%, and was a key role player for the Los Angeles Lakers. The key was swallowing his pride and focusing on what he could still do well instead of demanding touches he couldn't efficiently convert anymore. Chris Paul took a different approach but got similar results. Instead of fighting Father Time, he adapted his game multiple times as he aged. He went from primary scorer to pure facilitator, embraced veteran leadership roles, and stayed valuable well into his late 30s. Paul's secret was understanding that basketball IQ could compensate for declining athleticism, but only if he was willing to change his approach completely. On the flip side, Blake Griffin and John Wall show what happens when the adaptation doesn't work as well. Griffin went from all-star power forward to role player pretty smoothly, accepting reduced minutes and finding ways to contribute without dominating the ball. John Wall, on the other hand, never quite figured out how to be effective in a smaller role and ended up out of the league despite being younger than Russell Westbrook. The cautionary tales are guys like Steve Francis and Stephon Marbury, both explosive point guards who couldn't adjust when their athleticism faded. The franchise was out of the league by the age of 30, and Stephon Marbury had to eat a tub of Vaseline and then go to China to find success again. Both were ball-dominant players who relied on speed and first-step quickness. Does that sound familiar? The pattern is clear. Aging superstars who successfully extend their careers either completely reinvent their games to fit supporting roles, or they go overseas where they can still be the main attraction. Very few try to fight both time and circumstance simultaneously, and I think the hardest part of Russell Westbrook's decision isn't basketball or money, it's psychology. This is a guy who's been the best player on his team for most of his career, who's made over $300 million in NBA salary, and who still believes he can contribute at the highest level. Accepting a reduced role for reduced money feels like admitting defeat, even when it might be the smartest move. And we already know that Russell Westbrook definitely has an ego. Westbrook's wife Nina has been particularly vocal about defending him against criticism, calling out the vampire comments and pushing back against anonymous player quotes. When your family is invested in protecting your reputation, it becomes even harder to make the practical choice that might involve eating humble pie. But here's the thing, Russell Westbrook actually showed he could make that choice with the Clippers. He voluntarily came off the bench, accepted reduced minutes, and did it with class. The problem was that it only worked in the regular season, and NBA teams remember playoff failures more than regular season success. Going to Europe would allow him to be the man again. He'd be the highest paid player on the team, probably the primary offensive option, and definitely the biggest name in the building every night. For a guy whose identity is wrapped up in being a superstar, that has to be tempting, even if it means admitting that the NBA chapter is probably over. The financial reality makes it even more compelling. If Hapoel Tel Aviv is offering $3 to $4 million net, while NBA teams are offering $5 to $8 million gross, the European option could actually put more money in his pocket after taxes. Add in the shorter season, the first-class treatment, and the chance to be a basketball pioneer in a growing market, and it starts to look like a little bit more than just a consolation prize. But then there's one important point that we didn't bring up. Does Russell Westbrook even care about the money at this point? The man has made over $300 million throughout his career. The only thing that has eluded him is a championship ring. Would he really go out of his way to a brand new league in a brand new environment just so he can make more money? Even if the rumors are true of him being offered a 3-year $150 million contract, which personally I have trouble believing, unless if that report is true, I don't see him going out of his way to potentially pursue this. But throughout all the basketball and financial calculations, Russell Westbrook has to consider what this means for his family and his legacy. His His son Noah proudly writes Westbrook on everything and tells people that's my last name, as Westbrook emotionally shared when discussing the Westbrook nickname. Moving to Israel means being away from family for most of the year, or uprooting them to a completely different culture and language. On the legacy side, how does this chapter end? If he stays in the NBA and bounces between bench roles for a few more years, does that tarnish what he accomplished in his prime, or does accepting a reduced role show maturity and commitment to winning that adds to his legacy? Going to Europe could be seen as giving up on the highest level of basketball, or it could be viewed as a smart business move that extends his career and provides even more financial security. Stephon Marbury's reputation was actually enhanced by his China success. He went from NBA washout to international legend. But at the exact same time, Russell Westbrook doesn't need a ring to secure his legacy. He's already a Hall of Famer, a former MVP, and one of the most unique players in basketball history. Whether he spends his final years coming off the bench in Brooklyn or starring in Tel Aviv doesn't change what Russell Westbrook has been able to achieve in his prime with the OKC Thunder. And after breaking down everything, here's what I really think is going to happen, and it might actually surprise you because there are so many contradictions in this video, because Russell Westbrook has very legitimate reasons to make either decision. If you're betting on where Russell Westbrook plays next season, you can put your money on him definitely declining that Denver option and testing the market. The Nuggets' organizational chaos and his reduced role in crucial moments suggests that bridge might be burned, and he's not the type to stick around where he's not wanted. Between the NBA options, Brooklyn makes the most sense. They have the cap space to offer him decent money, the timeline would give him a real role, and the lack of championship pressure that would let him play freely. Sacramento would be the basketball fit, but Brooklyn is the business fit. We already know how involved Russell Westbrook is in fashion, and New York is the fashion capital of the United States. It'd be similar to when people accuse LeBron James of going to Los Angeles just to further his media empire. And at this stage of his career, Russell Westbrook's business and life after basketball might matter more. But don't sleep on the European option. If Hapoel Tel Aviv is really preparing unprecedented money and Westbrook is open to a completely different adventure, it could be the move that makes the most sense for everyone involved. He gets paid, he gets to be the star again, and NBA teams don't have to figure out how to maximize a 36-year-old point guard who still thinks he's 26. The Russell Westbrook story has always been about defying expectations and doing things his own way, whether that means accepting a bench role in Brooklyn, leading a young team in Sacramento, or becoming the highest paid American in European basketball history. One thing is certain, it's going to be entertaining to watch. This summer will determine whether Russell Westbrook's career ends with a whimper as an NBA role player or with a bang as an international superstar. Either way, the kid from UCLA who became Mr. Triple-Double isn't going out quietly. He never has, and he never will. So let me know in the comments section down below. If you're Russell Westbrook, what decision would you make? Aside from that, I don't know if you guys heard, Zion Williamson's legitimately ruining his life. I'm gonna leave a link to that in the end screen, and at the same time, the New York Knicks are planning something huge. Both of those videos will be in the end screen, and I'll meet you guys there. I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.